I rescued a pair of sisters who had been trafficked. However, what I never expected was that they would turn out to be the vicious villainesses in the novel, committing every imaginable crime. In the original story, they couldn't help but fall in love with the male lead, Makoto. But unfortunately, because they were villains in the book, they were doomed to a tragic end. In the end, the yandere younger sister was shot in the head by the police during her attempt to kidnap the male lead. The tsundere elder sister was plotted against by the heroine, framed, and sentenced to life in prison. So, I racked my brains and did everything I could to suppress the male lead, Makoto, all just to help the two sisters defy fate. Yet, just when I let down my guard, I caught sight of Willow sitting by Makoto's side. The two of them were whispering sweet nothings, smiling so happily together. In that instant, my defenses crumbled. Willow, this worthless girl, was conquered by the male lead in less than a month. Since that's the case, I will no longer interfere. I'll quietly watch them walk toward the tragic ending already written in the book. Chapter 1. I was helping in the fields, breaking off corn cobs, when suddenly a few lines of bullet comments appeared before my eyes. One read, "How did the villainous sisters end up being trafficked here?" Another replied, "This part was already in the original novel. When the villainous sisters were children, they were kidnapped by a perverted old man and abused for half a year. That's why their personalities completely changed. Sigh. Even the most hateful person has something pitiable about them." Yet another bullet comment said, "By the way, these sisters were really beautiful when they were kids. I wish I could jump into the story and adopt them." Hearing that, my hands froze mid-action with the corn. Adopt the villainous sisters? Such a good opportunity. Who else but me should seize it? Chapter 2. Less than 10,000 yuan? No way, another person replied. Then I'll just buy one, the seller said. Buying one is fine too. 6,000 yuan, the buyer asked. Wasn't it 5,000? I want the one on the left. Suddenly a childish yet defiant girl's voice rang out. I'd like to see who dares touch my sister. The crowd burst into laughter. Someone said, Yo, this little brat has quite the temper. Another replied, A few beatings will make her obedient. Panting heavily, I pushed my way through the crowd, clutching an old plastic bag stuffed with crumpled bills. I shouted loudly, I'll take both sisters. And just like that, I spent 10,000 yuan to buy the villainous sisters, who were only a few years old, and brought them home. I had used the last of my grandmother's savings, which she had left me for college in the future. In the dark, dingy main room of our house, the sisters sat with expressions full of disdain. I placed a plate of boiled potatoes and a small dish of pickled vegetables in front of them, our dinner. The sisters didn't budge an inch. The little girl with a sharp, proud look in her eyes glared at me coldly. She said, We want to go home. You'd better release us quickly. If my grandfather finds out, he won't let you off. I nodded and said, Eat up. Tomorrow morning I'll send you back. She asked, Really? The girl's disbelief was obvious. I said, As true as pearls. The next day, I took the villainous sisters to my cousin's house next door. I gave him the last 500 yuan I had and begged him to take us to a certain place. We traveled first by bus, then by train, exhausted after a day and a night. Finally, we reached the city mentioned in the bullet comments. I had never seen so many grand, beautiful houses in my life, one after another, scattered among lush green trees. At last, we stopped in front of the largest house. The two sisters, like birds freed from their cage, fluttered forward and ran out. By the flower bed, a woman in a maid's uniform saw this scene. She first covered her mouth in disbelief, then stumbled and ran into the house. In the blink of an eye, a whole group of people in maid uniforms rushed out of the villa. The moment they saw the sisters, every one of them was ecstatic, almost going mad with joy. Finally, an elderly man, wearing a Zhongshan suit and leaning on a cane, walked out. The sisters instantly threw themselves into his arms, crying their hearts out. The old man's eyes reddened as well. The three of them wept together. After the touching reunion, the old man's gaze finally landed on me. Inside the study, the old man gave both my cousin and me a bank card each. He said each card contained 200,000 yuan. No password required. He sincerely thanked us. My cousin was overjoyed. This trip was worth years of hard labor in the city. I, however, didn't take the card. Instead, I pulled out the last page of my household registration book. I made my request. Let me stay here to study until I graduate from university. The old man studied me briefly with a scrutinizing gaze. Without much hesitation, he agreed. I breathed a sigh of relief. At that moment, I knew I would no longer have to pick corn for others just to pay my tuition. Bullet comments erupted. Damn, who is this random passerby? He actually defied fate. He saved the villainous sisters from falling into the hands of that perverted old man. Doesn't that mean he's changed the story? Another bullet comment replied, no kidding, that might really be the case. Chapter 3. I was already in the 4th grade. By now, I could basically understand the content in the bullet comments. Freya and Willow were a pair of villainous sisters. Although they were still very young, only 6 years old, not even in elementary school yet, in the near future they would meet the male lead of this book. A male lead as warm as the sun, optimistic and cheerful. Both sisters would be drawn to him, and before they knew it, they would fall in love with him. But unfortunately, they were only villains in this story, destined to be nothing more than cannon fodder. Their final fates were the yandere younger sister being shot in the head by the police while trying to kidnap the male lead, and the tsundere elder sister being schemed against by the heroine, framed, and sentenced to life imprisonment. After learning of the sister's fate from the bullet comments, though, I felt a little regretful. I didn't want to overly interfere in the lives of others. This time I made an exception because of my own selfish reasons. I wanted to rely on the Liu family's power to grow up properly, to have books to read and food to eat. Once I graduated from university and could support myself, I would naturally leave the Liu family. So during this period, I must not develop any unnecessary entanglements with these sisters. Absolutely not. Chapter 4. After summer break, the old man arranged for me to attend an elite private school. A wide, bright teaching building, a clean and tidy library, a lush green playground. Even the bathrooms were spotless. It was nothing like the school in the countryside where, during class, you could smell the stench of the pit latrines. Freya and Willow were also enrolled here, attending 1st grade. I was placed in the 5th grade. At noon, I was eating lunch in the school cafeteria with my newly met deskmate when a voice suddenly interrupted me. Brother, I don't want to eat this chicken drumstick. Turning my head, I saw Willow standing behind me with her tray. My deskmate, David, looked surprised and exclaimed, George, is this your sister? I froze for 2 seconds before realizing what he meant and muttered a vague, After handing me her drumstick, Willow asked in her sweet, childish voice, Brother, can I sit here? Someone spilled soup on my seat, so I can't sit there anymore. In the cafeteria, each grade had its own dining section. I was about to make up some excuse to refuse her, but David quickly scooted to the side with excitement, saying warmly, Come, little sister, sit here. Then he turned to me and said, George, your sister is really cute. And indeed, Willow was quite pretty. Her eyes were bright and dark, her eyebrows shaped like willow leaves, and her nose delicate and straight. A textbook little beauty. I couldn't understand why she came here. And why was this kid so picky about food? This she wouldn't eat, that she wouldn't touch. During the whole meal, I was busy picking out onions and garlic for her. Afterward, I had to wipe her mouth, take her to wash her hands, and then send her back to her classroom. Goodbye, brother. Wait for me after school, okay? Willow said reluctantly. I looked at her and my heart was a mess of complicated feelings. According to the bullet comments, the yandere Willow, after failing to confess to the male lead, would have him kidnapped, locking him away on an island villa made entirely of glass. The house was fitted with dozens, even hundreds of cameras. She even shackled him, never allowing him to step outside. Someone this yandere. Could she really have been this obedient and sweet as a child? I shook my head, forcing myself to wake up. I absolutely must not be fooled by her. That night, after finishing my homework, I was preparing to go to bed. Unexpectedly, Willow came again, dressed in rabbit print pajamas, carrying a pillow and a book in her arms, gazing at me with hopeful eyes. "Brother, I can't fall asleep. Could you tell me a story?" This time, I rejected her without hesitation. I said, "No, I'm going to sleep." She tilted her head up, biting her lip, looking at me so pitifully. She said, "But I really want to listen." Back then, every night before bed, my dad would tell me stories from this book. I haven't heard them in such a long time. I had heard a bit about her parents. Apparently, they had died in a plane crash a year ago. Although she was pitiful, she still had her sister and a grandfather who was unimaginably wealthy, with dozens of servants lined up to wait on her. And me? My father was gone, my mother had run away with someone else, and my only grandmother, the one I depended on, had just passed away not long ago. I had to rely on others just to have a place to live and go to school. If anyone here was pitiful, wasn't it me? I said, "You can ask someone else to tell you a story. Don't you have lots of maids at home?" Hardening my heart, I shut the door. An hour later, feeling a bit thirsty, I went to the kitchen for water. When I opened the door, I found Willow hugging her pillow, sitting on the cold floor. The moment she saw me, her expression turned shy and hesitant. In a soft, sticky sweet voice, she said, "Brother, can you tell me a story now?" I gave in, completely speechless. I asked, "Why don't you let someone else tell you a story?" She was silent for a while before replying in a pitiful tone, "I don't like the way they look at me. Everyone thinks I'm pitiful." I was startled. This little girl was only 6, yet her observations were that sharp. I asked, "Then why do you want me to tell you a story?" She said, "Because you don't think I'm pitiful. You only think I'm annoying." I almost laughed. "If you know that, why still insist on me telling you a story?" Without the slightest hint of embarrassment, Willow hugged her pillow and walked straight into my room. Blinking her big, shining eyes, she asked, "Brother, can I sit on your sofa for a while? I'll leave after you finish the story." It seemed that unless I compromised, she wouldn't give up. Sighing, I reluctantly took the fairy tale book from her hands. I said, "Just one story. After I finish, you go straight back to your room and sleep." She nodded quickly, like a little chick pecking rice. I know." I began. One day, Donald Duck and his friends were playing by the lake when suddenly, but before I got far, there was a knock at the door. I got up to open it. It was Freya. She was also in rabbit print pajamas, her eyes cold and aloof, her tone distant as she said, "Willow, why aren't you back in your room sleeping yet?" Big Sister Willow called out excitedly, "Brother is telling me a Donald Duck story. It's so good." Freya said, "I don't want to hear it." I was about to close the door when Freya stepped inside. I was dumbfounded. "If you don't want to listen, then why come in?" Freya, in full tsundere style, said, "I'm staying here to wait for my sister." Fine, whatever." After finishing the Donald Duck story, I shut the book. I said, "That's it. Story's over. Go to bed now." Willow obediently got off the sofa, still hugging her pillow. Then suddenly, she planted a kiss on my cheek. She said, "Good night, brother." I froze, completely dumbfounded. You, what are you doing?" she explained in her soft, milky voice. Before, every time Dad told me a story, I would kiss him afterward. Freya rolled her eyes. "No one cares about that. Why did you kiss him? He's not our dad." She glared at her younger sister with obvious displeasure. Willow lowered her head, her voice weak as she said, "I know, sister." The two of them finally left, one walking with her head held high, refusing to show any weakness, the other trailing behind, dejected and gloomy. At last they were gone. After a long silence, bullet comments popped up again. "This little passerby is something else. He actually managed to live in the villainous sister's house. Not just that, the old man is even supporting him through university." Someone asked, "I'm starting to wonder, has he awakened self-awareness?" Another replied, "If he really has, then I truly hope he can help the villainous sisters walk the right path, keep them away from the male and female leads, and escape their tragic fate. Help the villains walk the right path. Escape their tragic fate? I don't have that kind of ability. Chapter 5. The next day at noon, Willow once again came over to my dining area. But this time it wasn't just her. Freya was carrying her tray as well. David stared in shock with envy in his voice. George, you actually have 2 little sisters? And they're twins? I looked at the 2 of them, utterly speechless, and said, "What exactly are you 2 trying to do?" Willow said, "Brother, I don't want garlic, and no chili either." Her soft, milky voice carried a hint of complaint. Bullet comments popped up. Don't want garlic or chili, yet you still ask the cafeteria lady to pile on so much spicy chicken. Willow seems kind of clingy with this passerby. What's going on? Another bullet comment replied, maybe she thinks George is her dad. Didn't she make him read her a story last night? Yet another one read, LOL, George is only 4 years older than her. The comments made my temples throb. I glanced at Freya beside me and asked, and what about you? She placed her tray in front of me, her tone still as tsundere as ever. I don't like Sichuan peppercorns. So both of them were treating me like a servant now. Since the Liu family had shown me kindness, I naturally wouldn't refuse such a small favor. So I picked out the ingredients they disliked from their trays, then let the 2 princesses sit down beside me. David chuckled and tried to be friendly. So, little sisters, what are your names? Freya gave him a cool glance and replied, don't talk while eating. David looked a bit awkward, forcing a laugh. George, your sister's pretty serious. Not wanting any unnecessary misunderstandings, I quickly explained, they're not my sisters. He looked surprised. Really? Then why do they call you brother? I thought for a moment and came up with a fitting answer. I'm a student, sponsored by their grandfather. A flash of understanding crossed David's eyes. He nodded and said, ah, I see. Just then, Willow suddenly put down her fork and looked at me with teary eyes. She said, don't you want to be my brother? Why would you say that? I was dumbfounded. What did I even say? Wasn't it the truth? Her sister, Freya, spoke coldly. Eat. Willow pouted and retorted, I don't want to. Freya snorted and said, he doesn't even want to be your brother. Why act like this? You sound just like those love-brained girls in novels. I was speechless. Kid, you're only 6 years old. What kind of novels are you reading all day? Ignoring her sister, Willow picked up her tray in a huff and walked off. Freya gave me a glance before leaving as well. Finally, peace returned. Watching their 2 figures leave one after the other, I felt an inexplicable heaviness in my heart. What the hell? This has nothing to do with me anyway. Chapter 6. I thought Willow was angry and wouldn't come to me for a bedtime story that night. But clearly I was wrong. At 9:30, Willow, as usual, showed up in her little rabbit print pajamas, hugging her pillow and carrying a storybook, knocking on my door. The little girl was pouting, her expression sulky, probably still upset about what had happened during the day. I told her a story about an elf and a wizard. It was a bit of a long story. I spoke for about half an hour until my throat went dry. When I finally closed the book, I discovered that this little princess had already fallen asleep. Unbelievable. I wanted to send her back, but I didn't even know where her room was. The maids had all gone to rest at this hour. So, I took a blanket out of the wardrobe and covered Willow with it. She could sleep here. When she woke up, she could go back herself. As for me, I made do by sleeping on the sofa for the night. Chapter 7. Who would have thought? The next morning, the moment I opened my eyes, I was so startled I nearly jumped off the sofa. What the hell? Why was Willow on my sofa? Willow! I shouted in anger. She was jolted awake, rubbing the corners of her eyes, looking at me sleepily. Brother, why are you here? I asked with a cold face. Willow froze for a moment, then seemed to recall what happened. She spoke carefully. Last night, I felt a little cold, so I scolded her. If you were cold, why didn't you sleep in your own room? She pursed her lips and said softly, I'm sorry. She lowered her head a bit, frustrated and dejected. Truthfully, I wasn't actually angry, but Willow was, after all, a girl. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't appropriate. I frowned and said, "Get down now, and for 1 week, don't come asking me to tell you stories again." Bullet comments appeared. "Sigh, this passerby is being too harsh. I can vouch for this. Yes, Willow grows up to be a yandere, but right now she's not like that at all. She just misses her parents." Exactly. Willow cries in her sleep almost every night from nightmares. Strange though, last night, she didn't have a single nightmare and she didn't cry either. Another bullet comment added, "If that's the case, then George really seems like an angel sent by heaven to save her." The words made me pause. An angel? Me? No, I wasn't an angel. And I had no intention of getting entangled with the two of them. All I wanted was to study hard, go to school, and when I grew up, stay as far away from them as possible. Chapter 8. Willow was surprisingly obedient. For an entire week, she really didn't come looking for me. I was satisfied. That's exactly how it should be. I had to draw a clear line between myself and the sisters, minding our own business so I wouldn't get dragged down by them in the future. Absolutely not. On Saturday afternoon, I took Buddy out for a walk. Not far from home, I heard a group of kids quarreling. "Willow, I heard you and your sister got kidnapped over summer break. What's it to you?" Willow replied coldly. "That's right, it's none of my business," the boy said. "I just think it's a shame you and your sister didn't get killed by the kidnappers." Another child asked, "Martin, what does killed mean?" The slightly older, chubby boy made a throat-slitting gesture. All the kids instantly understood. The chubby boy kept boasting, "I mean, you two sisters are really tough to kill. Your own parents died because of you, yet you're still alive and kicking. Even kidnappers couldn't finish you off." Willow bit her lip and said, "You're lying." The chubby boy laughed. "Lying? Everyone in the neighborhood knows. My mom said it. People like you are disasters born into this world. Sooner or later, even your grandfather will die because of you." Before he could finish, Willow, like an angry kitten, lunged forward and clawed at his face. But the chubby boy was bigger than me, and Willow clearly wasn't his match. Before I could react, Freya appeared out of nowhere. How could she watch her sister be bullied? She rushed in immediately and slapped the chubby boy across his fat face. The boy was furious and quickly called his friends for help. In an instant, a swarm of boys charged at them. This was bad. Even if I didn't want to get involved, I had no choice. Chapter 9. Stop. I walked over with Buddy, raising my voice. No one paid attention. Woof, woof, woof. Buddy, worried for me, barked anxiously. So, I let go of Buddy, grabbed the chubby boy's arm, and bit down hard. "Aw!" The boy screamed in pain, his voice like a pig being slaughtered. Everyone froze, stopping their fight, staring at each other in confusion. "Who the hell bit me?" The chubby boy held up his bleeding arm, furious. "I did," I admitted, raising my hand. The kids all gaped at me. Even Freya and Willow stared in shock. The chubby boy roared, "Who the hell are you?" Before I could answer, Freya stood up and said seriously, "He's my brother." The chubby boy blinked, then sneered in realization. "Oh, you're that country bumpkin their family adopted, right? Ha, what a pitiful sight, 3 orphans lumped together." This brat was begging for a beating. I had never met anyone so obnoxious in my life. I chuckled and said, "Not just that. You're about to be an orphan too." The boy jumped up in rage. "What do you mean? How dare you curse me?" "It wasn't a curse." I leaned in close, lowered my voice, and whispered something into his ear. He stiffened, turning pale, eyes wide. "You're lying," he gritted out. I just smiled. "Don't believe me? Then go home and check. Otherwise, why do you think your mom always makes you go out and play on Saturday afternoons?" The boy glared at me with hatred, then bolted, shouting as he ran, "Just you wait. If I find out you're spreading lies, I'll skin you alive." His little gang looked dumbfounded. "Martin, where are you going?" they shouted after him. I said casually, his family's got some issues. You'd better go help him. Like idiots, they all hurried after him, leaving only Freya and Willow behind. Freya had been hurt. Her lip was split, her face scratched. I walked over, crouched down and asked, "Does it hurt? Let me see your wound." But Freya shook her head and instead asked, "What did you say to him?" I teased, "Wanna know? Then call me brother and I'll tell you." Freya was completely different from Willow. Willow called me brother every chance she got, but Freya had never once said it. Not that I actually cared, I just wanted to tease her. Freya turned her face away, snorting coldly. "In your dreams." I shrugged. "Oh well, if you don't want to know, forget it." Standing up, I gave them both a casual glance. "Aren't you leaving? Or do you plan to stand here until dinner?" "Brother, wait for me." Willow abandoned her sister and came running to me like a kitten, trying to grab my hand. Buddy came trotting over too. So, the three of us walked off together, leaving Freya standing alone behind us. Chapter 10. That very night, Martin's mom getting caught rolling in the sheets with the driver became the talk of the entire villa community. And the funniest part was a group of kids had been the ones to find out. From then on, he no longer had any right to mock the Liu sisters. His family would instead become the new scandal and laughingstock of the neighborhood. That sharp-tongued mother of his could finally have a taste of what it felt like to be gossiped about behind her back. Not 2 days later, Willow came running to me with good news. "Brother, did you hear? Martin's parents are getting divorced, and he's bawling at home. People are saying Martin isn't even his dad's real son. Now his dad doesn't want him, his mom doesn't want him either. He's so pitiful, he's become a kid nobody wants." I was working on my English test paper, my hand pausing for just a second. I didn't know if what I had done was truly right. But according to the bullet comments, his parents were destined to divorce sooner or later. All I did was make it happen 6 months earlier. I asked, "Why are you so happy about someone else's parents divorcing?" She said, "Of course I'm happy. He always mocked and attacked me before. Brother, you're amazing. You even made Martin that big bully cry like a dog." "It wasn't me who was amazing. It was the bullet comments," I muttered. She huffed, "Humph. If he dares laugh at me again, I'll laugh him to death instead." I sighed. "Don't just fight with people like that. Next time, if you meet someone like him, stay away. Understand?" She nodded obediently. Got it, brother. Next time someone bullies me, I won't fight. I'll just call brother to handle it." Willow sat across from me, resting her chin in her hands, staring at me with sparkling eyes as if stars were shining inside them. I felt goosebumps crawling up my arms. I said, "Why are you sitting here? I'm doing homework. Go away." She pursed her lips. "Oh, okay." Seeing my impatience, she slowly stood up, shuffling toward the door, turning back to look at me 3 times with every step. She asked, "Brother, when will you finish your homework?" I replied, "I don't know." She asked, "When you're done, can I come play with you?" I replied, "No." The light in Willow's eyes instantly dimmed. She leaned pitifully against the doorframe, stalling. She said, "Then, can I come to your room tonight so you can tell me a story? The 1-week punishment is already over." Looking at her pitiful expression, my heart softened in the end. I gave a quiet Her smile immediately returned. She curved her lips happily and skipped away, bouncing as she went. Life returned to the way it had been before. Every day at lunch, Willow and Freya would show up in my class with their trays, wanting me to pick out the food they didn't like. David quite liked the sisters, always trying to tease them during meals. David sighed dramatically. "Ah, I really wish I had a cute little sister. George, why don't you give me one of yours?" Then he said, "Hey, if I ask my mom to have another baby now, do you think it's too late?" He turned to Willow. "Willow, want to come live at my house? It's really fun there." Freya. But faced with Freya's cool, aloof expression, David gave an awkward laugh. Ha ha ha, just kidding. Let's eat. Let's eat." After the sisters left, David patted my shoulder seriously. "Your sister, when she grows up, She's definitely going to be a domineering CEO. I was speechless. What on earth does he usually read? But in truth, he wasn't wrong. Freya really did grow up into a domineering CEO. But she was ruthless, scheming, a textbook femme fatale. To be with the male lead, she cut ties with her own sister, even drove her grandfather, the man who had raised her, to cough up blood from rage. In the end, despite all her plotting, she was counterattacked by the heroine and thrown into prison. Looking at the cold tsundere little girl before me now, it was hard to imagine her turning into a love-obsessed woman. But maybe that's the power of the story. No one can stop it. Chapter 11. After entering elementary school, Freya and Willow's schedules became much tighter than before. At home, there were always various private tutors. From Monday to Friday, it was back-to-back English, math competitions, coding, and piano. On weekends, it turned into tennis, golf, and horseback riding. The old man even told me to take lessons with the sisters. I picked one or two that might be useful for future work. The rest, even if I learned them, they'd be useless to me. Although he dearly loved his granddaughters, the old man never let up when it came to studying. Every 3 days, he would test them on their lessons. The sisters were exhausted with almost no time to play, spinning like tops every day. Sigh. The family was already so rich, yet they still worked this hard. How was anyone else supposed to live in comparison? But no matter how busy the schedule was, every night at 9 o'clock sharp, Willow would faithfully appear at my door, demanding that I tell her a story before she obediently went back to sleep. Sometimes Freya would join her. The two sisters would sit quietly on the sofa, listening to me tell stories. Every time, bullet comments would flood across my vision. What a harmonious scene. The villainous sisters look so well behaved. Why do I feel like whenever these three are together there's this peaceful, idyllic vibe? I really hope the sisters don't turn dark when they grow up. I just want them to live happily like this with little passerby, eh? Woo-woo, me too. George, just work a little harder and raise them well, please. Chapter 12. Time flew by quickly. Before I knew it, I was graduating elementary school. Middle school allowed applications for boarding, and after much consideration, I decided to live on campus. The old man agreed. Unexpectedly, Willow caused a fuss. If brother is going to live at school, then I want to live there too. I refused to be swayed by her. I said, whatever. Even if you live at school, I'll be in middle school and you'll still be in elementary. Our dorms won't even be close. Hearing this, she frowned and thought hard. Then she said, so, all I need to do is catch up and get to middle school quickly, right? I couldn't help but laugh. What are you thinking? You're 4 years younger than me. When you're in elementary, I'm in middle school. When you're in middle school, I'm in high school. When you're in high school, I'm in university. When you're in university, I've already graduated. Willow stared at me, deadly serious. Brother, one day I'll catch up to you. I shrugged dismissively. Then go ahead and try. In the end, my plan to board at school didn't work out. The old man suddenly changed his mind. He said I was still too young and might not adjust well to dorm life. Besides, the school food couldn't compare to home, and since I was still growing, I couldn't afford to eat poorly. The old man had shown me kindness so naturally, I couldn't go against his words. I had no choice but to give up the idea. What I didn't know was that my casual remark at the time, someone had taken it to heart. Willow skipped a grade in middle school. Then she skipped another in high school. By the time I was in my 3rd year of university, she had actually been admitted to a university in the same city. It was only a half-hour drive from mine. The old man was overjoyed. He immediately bought a villa, hired maids and a driver, and even called to inform me. In just half a year since I had last seen her, Willow had changed a lot. She was tall and graceful, elegant as orchids. Her refined features and flowing lines could instantly outshine the hottest star whose posters were plastered across every street corner. Truly, she was like her brows carried the faint color of distant mountains, her eyes like the clear autumn lake with light rippling beneath their gaze. While I was still dazed, a young girl came down the stairs, smiling radiantly at me. Brother, I snapped out of my thoughts, pulling myself back to reality. With a teasing tone, I chuckled. Well, the little brat's grown taller again. Aunt Wu must be feeding you extra rations at home. Huh? Willow pouted and pinched my arm in annoyance. I continued, how's Grandpa's health? Willow huffed lightly. He's fine. I said sincerely, congratulations on getting into your dream university. 16 years old and already admitted into one of the country's top schools. Truly, only a novel would dare write something like this. Willow's dark eyes gleamed as she pulled out a confident smile, her voice cheerful. I told you, I'd catch up to you. I stared at her a little dazed for a moment. Then she tugged on my arm, acting spoiled. Come on, let me show you your room. Room? I was baffled. She dragged me upstairs, pushed open a door, and inside was a warmly decorated bedroom. Bright floor-to-ceiling windows, a soft beige carpet. Tilting her head, she said proudly, Brother, I saved the biggest room just for you. Leaning against the doorframe, Willow looked at me expectantly as if waiting for praise. I frowned. Why would you save it for me? So you can live here, she said matter-of-factly. I shook my head. Thanks, but I don't plan on living here. The dorms are fine. Her face tensed, her tone suddenly stubborn. No, you have to live here. Why do I have to live here? I asked, confused. She bit her lip. Because Grandpa said so. He said you've been careless and reckless ever since you were a kid, never knowing how to take care of yourself. He's worried you won't eat well or sleep well in the dorms. He doesn't feel at ease. Willow paused, her gaze softening as she looked at me. And besides, I wouldn't feel at ease either. The old man really did fuss over me a lot. Back when I first entered university 2 years ago, he wanted to buy me a luxury apartment near campus because he worried I wouldn't get used to dorm life. I refused no matter what, and only then did he let it go. I laughed. What's there to worry about? I've been living in the dorms for 2 years now, and it's been fine. Willow shook her head. That was before. I wasn't here yet. Now that I am, it's different. I can take care of you. I was dumbfounded. You take care of me? I couldn't help but laugh. Then what are Aunt Wu and Driver Lee here for? Willow pursed her lips. They take care of me. I take care of you. It doesn't conflict at all. I could only smile and shake my head. As I went back downstairs, I suddenly bumped into someone. A figure about the same height as Willow, with similar features but colder, more distant, radiating an aura that kept strangers away. Freya. Eyes wide, I asked in shock, You're here too? Freya raised an eyebrow, her gaze cool and calm. She gave a dismissive snort. Why shouldn't I be here? Only after a while did I realize Willow and her sister were both new students this year, at the same university, so both of them had skipped grades. No wonder Grandpa was so happy. Then another thought struck me. In the novel, the sisters met the male lead during university. So if they were both here, wasn't this where the plot officially began? I couldn't help but sink into deep thought. Chapter 13, although I wasn't too keen on moving in, Willow was extremely persistent. On top of that, the moment Aunt Wu saw me, she sighed endlessly, frowning. Why are you skinny again? Have you been eating properly, George? Listen to me. Move in here. Aunt Wu will cook big meals for you every day. After a little thought, I decided to stay here. After all, eating Aunt Wu's cooking every day with Driver Lee chauffeuring me to and from class. There really wasn't a happier life than this. Life almost felt like it had returned to the past. In the mornings, Driver Lee would follow the class schedules and drop the three of us off at school, one by one. In the afternoons, he'd pick us up in order and bring us home. This house wasn't as large as the Liu family villa, but it had everything. A gym, a heated pool, a private theater. So we rarely lingered outside. Most of the time, after classes ended, we'd just come straight back. In our free time, we'd watch movies at home or chat at the dinner table about the latest gossip and news. Of course, that was mostly just between Willow and me. Some things hadn't changed since childhood. Whenever there was food the sisters didn't like, I was still the one who had to pick it out for them. Seriously. From the time I was 10, acting as their ingredient picker until now, 20 years old, I was still their ingredient picker. Honestly, I really didn't get it. If they didn't like Sichuan peppercorns or scallions or fennel, couldn't they just tell Aunt Wu not to put them in the dishes? But Willow had her own crooked reasoning. Pouting, she said, "That won't do. Seasonings are the soul of every dish. I can choose not to eat them, but they can't be left out." I was utterly speechless. Chapter 14 in November, Uncle Wong, the one who usually took care of the yard and odd jobs, had some family matters to deal with and decided to resign. So I posted a job listing online. That very afternoon, several people came for interviews. Quite a few applied for the gardener position, some of them even college students younger than me. Just as I was wondering why college students would be applying, bullet comments appeared. Dun dun dun, grand entrance of the male lead. No wonder he's the male lead. That gentle, refined aura, those delicate, handsome features. No surprise the sisters would fall for him so easily. Of course, the male lead is supposed to be a warm-hearted guy. He fits the role perfectly. Then another flashed across the screen. Honestly, I think George is good enough. Someone shot back. Good or not, he's just a passerby. Now that the male lead is here, he can go find a corner and stay out of the way. Other comments read, "Who understands me? I seriously don't want to see the sisters end up ruined just because of some male lead. I only want to see George and the Liu sisters live happily together." Exactly. George, kick the male lead out. Don't let him near Freya or Willow. But then there were also dissenters. What nonsense are you spouting? The Liu sisters are the villainesses of this novel. That's a fact. Getting entangled with the male lead is their destined path. Destiny, my foot. Do villains have to die? Can't they just stay far away from the male lead? Right, George already changed the sisters' fate once. Why can't he change it for them again? The comments scrolled quickly before my eyes. My heart wavered. Change Willow and Freya's fate again? Would that really be okay? After 30 seconds of hesitation, I looked at the young man before me and said, "You still look like a student. Sorry, but we're hiring for a full-time role. You might not be the best fit." The man frowned slightly, his tone humble. "Mr. Wong, I'm a freshman in the law department at C University. This place is close to school. It'd be very convenient. I really need this job. Could you reconsider?" C University Law Department? Wasn't that the exact same school and major as Willow's? Bullet comments rushed in. The male lead has a tough life too. His grandma is sick, he needs money. What's George doing? He's just a passerby. How dare he block the male lead from meeting the villainesses? Another comment retorted, "I remember in the original novel, the male lead got this job. Spending time with the sisters, he gradually healed their childhood trauma and both ended up falling for him. Since that was the case, I thought for a moment before saying, if you're looking for work, there's a cafe not far from here. It's run by a buddy of mine and they're hiring. The pay and benefits are pretty good. I can give you his WeChat, you can work there part-time." A flicker of disappointment crossed his eyes, but he forced a smile and said, "All right then, thank you very much." Bullet comments exploded again. What a despicable passerby, forcefully tampering with the plot. I actually think George did the right thing. The farther the male lead is from Willow and Freya, the better. What the hell? Then what's the point of watching anymore? Yeah, I want to see the villainesses fall for the male lead. But others chimed in, "I don't think a novel storyline can be overturned so easily by some passerby. Maybe there's still going to be a twist." Chapter 15, the last bullet comment had it right. I really had no power to control the course of the story. The next afternoon, just as I returned home from school, I found the male lead, Makoto, sitting in the living room. "George, this kid came here looking for work. I heard his grandma is sick and he needs money for her treatment. I felt sorry for him, so I decided to let him stay." Wu Auntie pulled me aside and lowered her voice, making it clear that there was no way I could oppose her decision. She had worked in the Liu family for over 20 years, and even in front of grandfather, her words held weight. Perhaps this was the power of the plot itself. I couldn't stop it. There was never a chance I could. Makoto spoke apologetically. "Mr. Wong, I'm sorry. I didn't think the cafe job suited me, so I came here to tell you. But then Wu Auntie. I could already guess what he wanted to say. Forcing a smile, I replied, "It's fine. Just do your best here." By evening, Willow and Freya returned home one after another. Makoto froze when he saw the bright, beautiful girl before him. His eyes lit up, his voice tinged with joy. "Willow?" Willow glanced at him in confusion, frowning slightly. "And you are?" Makoto hesitated, scratching his head before replying, "You probably don't know me. I'm also a freshman in the law department at C University. My name is Makoto." Willow nodded absent-mindedly. Makoto seemed to want to continue chatting, but seeing her distant attitude, he awkwardly shut his mouth. The next second, he froze again, his eyes glued to the doorway. Freya stepped in, dressed in an off-white trench coat that accentuated her tall figure and elegant demeanor. Her eyes were calm and indifferent as she walked straight past without noticing the unfamiliar face in the living room, heading upstairs. Freya had mild cleanliness issues. Her first routine upon getting home was always to shower. Makoto, who had been about to greet her, stiffened mid-motion. He just stood there staring blankly as she disappeared upstairs. After a few days of working here, Makoto had begun to get the hang of things. Since it was only a part-time job, he could only come over after classes, working about 4 hours a day. Not only was he hard-working, but he was also observant. After finishing his own tasks, he would even take the initiative to help Wu Auntie with household chores. Friday night, maybe because it was the weekend and he had more free time, Makoto even went into the kitchen to lend Wu Auntie a hand. By the time I came downstairs, he had already set the table for us. He even went so far as to pick out the chopped chili from Willow's steamed fish head with chili peppers. He peeled all the shrimp for Freya. Truly worthy of the warm and caring male lead, attentive and considerate. Within just a few days, he had already figured out the sisters' eating habits. When dinner began, Willow frowned slightly as she looked at the perfectly cleaned fish meat in front of her. "Wu Auntie, could you get me a bowl?" she asked. When the bowl was brought over, Willow deliberately picked up a piece of the fish with chili and placed it in front of me. Her eyes were hopeful, her tone laced with a bit of spoiled sweetness as she said, "Brother, help me pick it out." I pushed her hand away, warning, "Stop being difficult." Willow looked pitiful, her voice soft. "Please," I replied bluntly, "get lost." Normally, if no one helped her, she would just let it go. But now that someone had picked things out for her, she still had to act all fussy. I wasn't about to indulge her. Willow sighed, pulling her bowl back with a face full of tragedy. She muttered, "Brother is so stingy." Freya, on the other hand, didn't touch the bowl of peeled shrimp in front of her. Not even one. When the dishes were cleared, Makoto's expression didn't look too good. Wu Auntie gently explained to him, "You probably didn't know. Our two young ladies here don't like anyone else picking their food for them. Not even me. The only exception is George. They don't like anyone else touching their bowls." Bullet comments rolled across the screen. "Heh, the more they dislike the male lead now, the more they'll regret it later. This is definitely heading into angst territory. The villainous sisters are just waiting to be slapped in the face. It's all George's fault that passerby stole Makoto's spotlight." Another comment said, "Don't worry, the Lu sisters are destined for the male lead. No one can take that away." Ever since Makoto appeared, the hostility toward me in the bullet comments seemed to increase. I tried my best to stay calm and not let it get to me. I realized things were starting to spiral out of control when Makoto's grandmother came to C-City for medical treatment. Wu Auntie, feeling they had no support in C-City and no place to stay, suggested that Makoto's grandmother live in the Lu family's villa during her treatment, which meant our current residence. Wu Auntie had always been the softest and kindest person. Back then, because I had lost my parents at a young age and entered the Lu family alone, she felt sorry for me. That's why she had doted on me and cared for me all these years. Now, she felt the same way about Makoto, thinking he was pitiful, so she extended a helping hand. Originally, this would have been an unquestionable act of kindness. But when that person happened to be the male lead of this story, Makoto, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. After settling his grandmother here, Makoto began spending more and more time in the Liu household. Since he attended the same school and was in the same year as Willow and Freya, his relationship with the sisters visibly grew closer. What's more, Makoto and Willow were even in the same major. Twice, I saw them discussing group assignments together. Makoto sat beside Willow, his gaze brimming with tender indulgence. The bullet comments flooded in, mocking me. Ha ha ha. George the passerby has been completely broken. Watching Willow and Makoto grow closer, yet powerless to do anything about it. He has some skills, sure, but so what? No one can stop the romantic storyline between the villainous sisters and the male lead. Looks like Willow's about to fall for the male lead. Just look at how sweet her smile is. Next up, he'll conquer Freya. I admit I did feel rattled. Willow was that easy less than a month, and the male lead had already won her over. Didn't I already eliminate all the risks she faced as a child? And yet, she still couldn't escape the clutches of the storyline. Forget it. Whatever happens with them is their business. After all, I'm just the passerby in this novel. No matter how much I do, I can't change the plot. As hard as it is to accept, I have no choice but to face it. Willow and Freya are bound to meet their fates in the story. Because I was feeling depressed, I went to a bar to drink. Around 8 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Willow calling. I directly hung up. 5 minutes later, she called again. I hung up once more. Another 5 minutes passed, and right on time, my phone rang again. Just as I was about to power it off, the ringing abruptly stopped. 10 minutes later, it rang again. This time it was Freya calling. Without hesitation, I shut my phone down completely. Since I couldn't change the fate of the sisters, I figured I'd better stay away from them. In fact, from childhood until now, I had always warned myself to keep my distance from the Liu sisters. And yet, I still let them occupy such an important place in my life. From now on, I have to draw a clear line with them. From here on, bridges are bridges, roads are roads. I must never get dragged down by them. Yes, that's how it has to be. At 11 o'clock, I returned home in a taxi, my head heavy from the alcohol. Wu Auntie saw me, her eyes widening like copper bells. She patted her chest repeatedly as if recovering from a fright. George, where have you been? Miss Willow and Miss Freya have been looking for you all night. They even called the police. At that moment, the last thing I wanted to hear was their names. I replied impatiently, nowhere, just had a few drinks with some buddies. Wu Auntie quickly made several phone calls and then helped me upstairs. When I came out of the shower, I found two slender figures standing in my room. Neither of them looked very pleased. Where did you go? Freya was the first to ask. Her resentful gaze locked onto me, the silver-rimmed glasses glinting coldly under the light, giving her an air of detached austerity. She looked like she was about to interrogate me, utterly baffling. I rubbed my nose and said carelessly, "What's it got to do with you?" I toweled my hair roughly and lay straight down on the bed. My head was spinning, and I didn't want to stand. Why didn't you answer the phone? This time it was Willow speaking. This girl was getting more and more brazen. She didn't even call me brother anymore. I had completely lost my patience. I told them flatly, "Get out. I'm going to sleep." She asked, "Wu Auntie said you were drinking? Who were you drinking with?" Freya's cold voice cut in again, sharp and frigid. I really didn't want to deal with them anymore. I was exhausted. "Turn off the light when you leave," I said. But the two of them acted as if they hadn't heard me. Willow came closer, sat on the edge of the bed, and reached out to touch my forehead. She bit her lip and said softly, "Were you unhappy today? Did something happen? What happened?" Besides the fact that these two love-brained idiots were about to get swept away by some man, what else could it be? I almost blurted it out, but in the end, I swallowed the words. A knock sounded at the door. Makoto's voice followed. "I made some hangover soup. Do you know if Brother Wong would like some? Come in." Moments later, Makoto entered, carrying a tray. Freya said, "Just give it to me, you can go out now." Makoto paused, glanced at Willow by my bedside, then nodded and replied, "All right." To get the two of them to leave sooner, I downed the hangover soup quickly. Now tell me, George, who did you drink with tonight? Freya picked up the bowl and repeated the question. Damn, was she insane? I shut my eyes briefly and spat out one word. Classmate. She pressed. Where? At a bar, I answered. Willow frowned at that. She pouted and said, if you wanted to drink, why not drink at home? Bars are messy places. Endless. This was endless. I ruffled my hair irritably and muttered, because there are no models at home. The room instantly went silent. The air froze. Willow clearly hadn't expected me to answer like that. Her eyes darkened as if trying to gauge whether I was telling the truth. Her sister Freya didn't look any better. Her voice turned ice cold. You even hired models? I said lazily, yeah, so what? Not allowed? Done asking. Can I sleep now? Without waiting for their reply, I abruptly switched off the bedside lamp. They could stay if they wanted. Either way, I was going to sleep. Chapter 19. When I opened my eyes again, faint light was seeping through the curtains. Dawn was approaching. I turned over. The next moment, I almost rolled off the bed. Terrified, I switched on the bedside lamp and saw Willow, pale as a ghost, propped on one hand against the pillow. Her pupils were black, like a bottomless abyss. She just stared at me with that eerie, chilling gaze. She asked, Brother, did you really hire models last night? Damn, my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. Both sisters were crazy. Seriously crazy. Gritting my teeth, I said, Willow, you've got 3 seconds. Get off my bed immediately. She didn't move an inch. Completely ignoring my words, she softly breathed out her next question. What does brother like about models? I pressed my temples, which were throbbing madly, and replied, big chest, slim waist, nice body, black stockings, long legs, abs. Are those reasons good enough? Willow stayed silent, studying me for a long while. Finally, she said, I understand. I was speechless. Understand my ass. I wanted nothing more than to kick her straight out. As soon as that jinx finally left, I rushed to lock the door. For several days in a row, I came home extremely late. Grabbing skewers with classmates, drinking, going to the internet cafe. The later I could return, the better. I didn't care how Makoto and the sisters were getting along. Out of sight, out of mind. Chapter 20. On Saturday morning, I woke up later than usual. After not finding Wu Auntie anywhere, I poured myself a glass of warm milk in the kitchen and made a sandwich. An elderly woman shuffled over and said to me, Wu Auntie went to the supermarket to buy groceries. It was Makoto's grandmother. I nodded lightly. Maybe she had been cooped up in her room for too long and wanted someone to talk to. She looked at me with a smile and said, Child, I heard your surname is Wong. I didn't understand why she asked that, but since she was an elder, I politely nodded. Yes. She then asked, and what's your relationship with the Liu family? After a pause, I still answered, Old Master Liu adopted me. As if her suspicions were confirmed, a look of realization flashed across her face. Her tone grew somewhat cutting as she said, Well, you really are lucky to be adopted by such a wealthy family. That's much better luck than my poor grandson ever had. Truly, people can live such different lives, even though they're all just people. Sigh. Though old, she had a shrewd face, especially her eyes, sharp and spinning as they sized me up, full of calculation and judgment. I had no interest in continuing the conversation. I stood, picked up my sandwich and left. Expressionless, I said, Granny, if you want to sell your sob story, you can do it on the street. I'm not interested in competing over who's had it worse. Sorry, I'm going upstairs. She snapped angrily, You child, how can you talk like that? But the very next second, her eyes caught sight of Freya on the staircase. Freya was watching her, her gaze as cold as frozen tundra. At the sight of her, the old woman's face instantly softened into a kindly smile. Compared to how she'd spoken with me, her warmth rose by several notches. She said, Miss, you're up. Would you like breakfast now? I went straight upstairs. Just as I was about to close my door, Freya followed me in. After hesitating for a few seconds, she pressed her lips together and looked up at me, saying, "You don't like them. You don't want them living here. Why didn't you say so earlier?" I replied, exasperated, "What do you mean?" She snorted coldly. "Can't you show some backbone? This is your home too. Can't you stand up for yourself a little?" I said flatly, "How am I not standing up for myself? What was I supposed to do? Just slap her across the face?" When Makoto and Wu Auntie came back, they immediately learned from the butler Zach that Freya had arranged a private room at the city hospital. His grandmother would be able to move in that very afternoon. Makoto's grandmother was suffering from coronary heart disease and vascular problems. Previously, she had wanted to be admitted to the city hospital, but no bed was ever available. So during these days, she had only been picking up medication there and then recuperating at the villa. Hearing Zach's words, Makoto's face showed a brief flicker of relief, but right after came a trace of barely perceptible disappointment. His smile looked somewhat forced as he said, "I see. Thank you." The bullet comments swarmed in. "Haha. The male lead is smiling so reluctantly. He had just started warming up to the Liu sisters, but they actually kicked him out. Isn't this all passerby A's fault? He's really heartless, and the way he talks is nasty." Others commented, "Well, you can't entirely blame George. The male lead's grandma really has no sense of boundaries. The way she speaks isn't pleasant, but what she said was true. Freya will regret this one day." Another bullet comment argued back, "Regret what? Regret kicking out the guy who was destined to cause her sister's death? Regret not letting herself get framed and thrown into prison? Haha. The one upstairs is overthinking." More comments appeared. "I think George did the right thing. The further the male lead stays away from the sisters, the better. He can date the heroine all he wants, just don't involve our villains." Finally, a comment popped up. "Quiet. Willow's coming downstairs. She definitely won't agree to letting the male lead move out." I looked up. Sure enough, Willow was coming down the stairs. She must have just woken up. There was still a trace of drowsiness on her face. Makoto quickly adjusted his expression and said politely, "Miss Liu, you're up. Good timing. I wanted to thank you for taking care of my grandmother during this time." Willow processed the situation. Tilting her head slightly, she asked, "You're leaving already?" Makoto stood there silently, eyes full of words left unsaid. Finally, he sighed. "Yes, my grandmother is being admitted to the city hospital. Freya helped us find a room. From now on, I'll probably need to look after her, so I won't be able to keep working here." Upon hearing this, Willow immediately turned to Wu Auntie and said without hesitation, "Wu Auntie, have the butler give him an extra 5 months' salary." Makoto froze. A shadow crossed his face. That was clearly not what he wanted to hear. The bullet comments exploded. How could Willow humiliate the male lead with money like that? Wait, what? You call that humiliation? I'd love to be humiliated like this every day. Exactly. They're just classmates right now. Makoto's grandma came to the city for treatment. They let them stay here for half a month for free, and now she even gave him an extra 5 months' salary. How is that a villain? She's a living saint. Another comment chimed in. So what? In the original, the yandere villainess insisted on tying the male lead down. Even if it cost her own life, she never thought she was wrong. The next one wrote, "Forget it, that kind of ending is unnecessary. Willow's so beautiful, has such a wealthy grandfather, and is both kind and loving. Why shouldn't she deserve a perfect ending?" Agreed. Honestly, I think it's great the male lead is leaving. Thanks to George, the villain sisters escaped their childhood tragedies. They don't need redemption anymore. Chapter 21. After Makoto and his grandmother moved out, the house finally returned to peace. I didn't know if I had once again interfered with the plot, nor did I know if things like this would come back again. But at least for now, it was safe. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had gone by. I was about to graduate. After more than a month of searching, I successfully landed a job, $13,000 a month, 9 to 5, weekends off. I was quite satisfied. Wu Auntie, however, was puzzled. She hesitated before asking me, "George, why don't you go work at Lu Corporation? The old master already arranged a position for you. Once Willow and Freya graduate, we'll all be going back to City A. It'll be inconvenient for you to stay here alone." True enough. This place was at least a 2-hour drive away from the Lu family's ancestral home. Once Freya and Willow graduated, they would return to City A, and Wu Auntie and driver Lee would also pack up and leave. By then, only I would be left here. How should I put it? A long time ago, I had already made up my mind. Once I graduated from university, I would leave the Lu family. That way, I could avoid being dragged down by staying too close to the villains. I was just a minor passerby in this book. My biggest wish was simply to survive quietly to old age. Although I had relied on bullet comments to gain some cheat codes and achieved nearly 10 years of counterattack, I didn't know if I would continue to be so lucky in the future. Nor did I know whether the Lu sisters had truly broken free of the plot. As a small character in the novel, self-preservation was my instinct. Yes, there was reluctance in my heart, but I believed that with time I would adapt. And so I became a standard office drone. Every day I worked diligently and cautiously. At first, driver Lee would insist on picking me up and dropping me off. But he already had to drive Freya and Willow to and from school every day, plus handle my commute. It was far too tiring. Later, I discovered that a girl from my department lived in the same area, just one street away. So we agreed to carpool and split the fare. This way, Zach wouldn't need to drive all the way here every day. But on our very first day carpooling, Freya caught us. After I said goodbye to my colleague, Freya pursed her lips and asked, word by word, "Who was that person?" I replied, "A colleague I carpool with." Freya didn't look very happy. Her brows furrowed as she asked, "Why don't you let Zach drive you?" I looked at her in confusion. Why would I need Zach to drive me? Her expression darkened even further. She said, "Can you be sure she's not some fairy girl?" I was speechless. What the hell was this brat saying? After a pause, she seemed to want to change the subject. "Didn't Grandpa call you? Why didn't you go work at Lu Corporation?" I asked. "And why should I go work there?" Freya raised her brows, a hint of warning flashing in her eyes. She snapped, "George, stop being so passive-aggressive. What the hell?" I retorted, "You're the one acting weird for no reason, aren't you?" She glared at me. Weird for no reason? Or is it because someone thinks he's graduated from college, grown some wings, and doesn't need to rely on the Lu family anymore, so now he wants to draw a line between us? I stared at her in shock. How did she know? But I absolutely wouldn't admit it. I said, "I don't understand what you're talking about." Freya sneered. "You'd better not." I decided not to respond anymore. Her tone suddenly softened. Blinking her eyes, she said, "Fine if you like. Just keep working here for now. When I graduate, we'll go back to City A together. I already told Grandpa to send Uncle Koo over tomorrow." Uncle Koo was an old servant of the Lu family. He had been the old master's driver for 30 years. Now that he was older, he was practically semi-retired. I hadn't expected Freya to drag him out here again. I said helplessly, "I only earn about 10,000 a month, and you're giving me a personal driver for what? My whole salary wouldn't even cover his gas." She snorted, "You don't have to pay for his gas." I stared at her in a daze, feeling that something wasn't right. The bullet comments suddenly surged in. "Guys, did you notice something? Damn." I already suspected something back when Freya kicked the male lead out. Turns out it's true. Another one chimed in, "Ah, this is great news. It means Freya has broken free from the plot. Childhood sweethearts. There's nothing sweeter to ship." Another comment read, "What a contrast. The glasses, wearing quiet girl who always treated George coldly. Turns out she was hiding it this whole time." I felt like I finally understood something. Staring at Freya in disbelief, I was dumbfounded. Seeing that I hadn't moved for a long time, she glanced back at me, raised her brows and said, "Aren't you coming in? I've been waiting for you to eat for a while now." Chapter 22. Dinner tasted like chewing wax. The moment I set down my bowl, I hurried upstairs. Just as I stepped out of the bathroom, there was a knock at my door. Felt like a string inside my head had been pulled taut. Who is it? Brother, it's me. For some reason, I let out a breath of relief. Willow seemed to have just finished showering as well, wearing a bathrobe. Droplets of water dotted her forehead, and her long hair hung damp down her back. I asked, "What is it?" She said, "Brother, I can't find the hair dryer in my room." I had no choice but to let her in. Lately, this girl had been acting strange. She kept running into my room. The day before yesterday it was shampoo, yesterday it was toothpaste, and today it was the hair dryer. I was starting to suspect she was developing early onset dementia. She asked, "Brother, can you help me dry my hair?" I muttered helplessly, "Can't you do it yourself?" Before I could finish, she leaned over and said, "I've never used this kind before." Without giving me a choice, Willow shoved the dryer into my hands. She pouted pitifully. "It's so cold. If I don't dry it soon, I'll catch a cold." I sighed in resignation and began to dry her hair. When my fingertips brushed across the back of her neck, I seemed to hear her give a soft gasp. I felt uneasy and was about to say something, but she urged me to switch it to cool air instead. Willow's hair was far too long. Took a long time to dry. Her hair was tinged with chestnut, cascading down her shoulders like a waterfall. With that delicate face of hers, when she wasn't smiling, she actually looked rather aloof. "Brother, were you staring at me?" Her voice was both amused and teasing. I quickly pulled back my gaze. "Your hair's dry. Now go back." Just as I turned to leave, she suddenly grabbed my arm. Willow looked into my eyes, her pitiful expression like a kitten despised by its master. Her voice was soft and wounded. "Why do you always chase me away?" Every alarm in my body went off at once. Maybe I was overthinking, but this girl really was acting strange. She asked, "Brother, are you some kind of blockhead?" I asked, "What do you mean?" I subtly pushed her aside. Willow said, "Don't boys like curvy bodies, long legs and black stockings and toned abs? I've been wearing black stockings, hanging around your room every day. Why won't you look at me even once?" My vision darkened. A terrible premonition spread through my mind. She said, "And brother, I already turned 18 last month. Last month had been the sister's 18th birthday. The old master even came here specially for the occasion." I frowned. "Of course I know you're of age, but what does that have to do with me?" She said, "Of course it has to do with you. Being an adult means I can date you now." Willow's lips curved into a smile. She raised one hand, hooking it around my neck. Her bright eyes overflowed with a charming, intoxicating allure. My temples throbbed violently. At that moment, lines of bullet comments flashed above me. Holy shit, I knew it would come to this. Sure, healthy love is important, but twisted love is the most thrilling. When you meddle with someone else's fate, you have to bear the consequences yourself. George must understand this now. Another bullet comment appeared. "Let's be real, Makoto and the female lead already got together ages ago. But since there were no villains to mess things up, their relationship turned bland, always bickering. There's nothing left worth watching with the male lead and female lead. They're just an ordinary couple lost in the crowd. What I want now is the extreme push and pull between the villain sisters and George." Another bullet comment said, "One's cold on the surface but burning inside, the other pretends to be a good girl but is secretly, I ship them so hard." Willow asked, "Brother, what's wrong?" Noticing the shift in my emotions, Willow looked at me curiously. I tore my eyes away from the bullet comments, my expression stiff. "No, nothing. I just feel like resting a bit." Willow asked with a hint of reluctance, "Brother, are you very tired? Should I stay and keep you company?" I said flatly, "No need." She replied, "All right then, brother, rest early. I'll come by tomorrow morning." As soon as Willow left, I pulled out my suitcase and began packing. The bullet comments burst out in discussion. "What is George doing? Isn't it obvious? He's running away." Someone replied, "Wait, isn't this stupid? Why take a suitcase? Does he want to announce it to the world? Exactly. If you're gonna run, just grab your bank card and go. No clothes, nothing else. That way, no one suspects anything. I froze instantly. They were right. If I dragged a suitcase downstairs, it'd be no different from walking into a trap. No, I had to stay calm. The next morning, I went downstairs for breakfast as usual. Freya's gaze lingered on my face for a moment. She poured me a glass of hot milk and asked, "Didn't sleep well last night?" I really hadn't. In that situation, how could anyone sleep well? "What's wrong?" she asked again. "Nothing," I said. Honestly, I had no mood to talk to her. "Do you want to take the day off?" she asked. "No need." Freya's eyes were like still water as she said, "Then don't forget, you're still riding with Zach today." Willow, sharp-eared as always, caught the key point instantly. Her gaze burned into me. "Brother, you didn't ride with Zach yesterday?" she asked. I steadied my mood and answered, "I carpooled with a coworker." Willow frowned, clearly displeased. "Brother, didn't you get your driver's license? Why not just drive Grandpa's car?" I was speechless. The first thing I did when I got to the company was hand in my resignation. The manager looked surprised, then tried to persuade me. But my decision was like stone. I was determined to leave. In the end, he had no choice but to approve it. Back at my desk, I quickly gathered my belongings. Then I headed to a nearby mall, bought a suitcase, a few changes of clothes, and daily essentials. After that, I withdrew 20,000 yuan in cash from an ATM. During my university years, the old master had transferred me allowance money every month. After 4 years, I'd saved quite a bit. Enough to buy a small place in some county town and live a decent life. I hailed a cab to the bus station, following the route I'd carefully planned yesterday. Bought a ticket, boarded the bus. Chapter 23. 2 days later, I finally turned my phone back on. Both of my WeChat conversations were flooded with 99+ unread messages. I didn't open them, but the bullet comments popped up at this moment. Ha ha ha, Willow's face was so sour. The day after her confession, not only did her brother quit his job, but he also ran away. Freya is really scheming. She once enabled the male lead's phone location sharing, and now she's already heading straight toward George's position. That line in the bullet comments startled me, and I quickly turned off the location service on my phone. The comments kept rolling in. What's going on? Why do I feel like George can see our bullet comments? I think so too. No wonder he can defy fate. It turns out he can actually see the comments. Another comment read, "This is getting more and more interesting. Why does it feel like I'm engaged in a battle of wits against the villain?" And another said, "George, don't worry. With us as your strategists, nothing will happen to you." But someone replied back, "Stop bragging. Freya already knows his location. She's on a plane and in at most 2 hours she'll be there." I shot to my feet. 2 hours? No way. I hurriedly checked out of the hotel room. What should I do? What should I do? I was panicking like crazy, restless as an ant on a hot pan. After thinking over and over, I finally hailed a taxi and randomly chose a nearby small town. Outside, a light drizzle began to fall. After a whole afternoon of exhaustion, I finally found a somewhat clean hotel. I booked a room, filled the bathtub with hot water, and decided to take a proper soak. I accidentally fell asleep. I don't know how long had passed when I woke up. The water in the tub had already gone cold. I put on a bathrobe and stepped out. A flood of bullet comments was flashing across the screen. "George, wake up! Freya already got the hotel to pull the surveillance footage, track down the taxi driver who drove you, and now she's on her way to kill you. This guy's heart is way too big. How could he even fall asleep? We're about to lose our minds here." Another comment said, "What's the rush? Why don't you just take both of them in already? I can't wait to see a 1v2 storyline." But the very next bullet comment countered, "That's a yandere villainess we're talking about. Did you see those long legs? Are those even legs? No, they're the spring waters of the Seine. A 1v2? You'll just get drained dry. George, run. Retreat. It's over. Our boy doesn't have long to live." My eyes widened. The next second, a knock really came at the door. Extra story, Chapter 1. If time went back 12 years, I would still choose to send Freya and Willow back to the Lu family. But if it went back 2 years, I definitely wouldn't have stopped the male lead Makoto from having any interactions with the two of them. I don't understand where things went wrong. Freya isn't even a yandere, so why did she suddenly turn dark for no reason? In the second month of being trapped inside this manor-like castle, I finally paid the price for meddling in other people's business. Now, no matter how much I regret it or beat my chest in frustration, it's useless. Bullet comments scrolled across above my head. So this is the place in the original novel where Freya imprisoned the male lead. Looks like a manor. Must be worth a fortune. Another comment replied, you probably don't know how rich her grandfather is. Even if you add up the top 10 on the Forbes list, it still wouldn't match old man Lu's wealth. He's just discreet and low-key. The next bullet comment read, I also want a rich lady to keep me. Even if it means doing nothing every day, just eating, idling around, not studying, not working, I'd still take it. Wake up already. Your drool from dreaming just dripped on my head. If Freya doesn't work out, Willow's fine too. I'm not picky. Another comment chimed in, anyone got some pee? Splash it on them to wake them up. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, rubbing my temple. Suddenly, I heard movement at the door. I turned my head back. It was Freya. She wore a black dress, tall and coldly beautiful. A pair of silver-rimmed glasses perched on her sharp nose, giving her an aloof, ascetic aura. I looked at her and suddenly felt like I should take back what I just said. She really did look like a yandere girl straight out of a novel. Have you eaten? Freya walked over, her tone casual and ordinary, as if nothing had ever happened between us. As if she hadn't kept me imprisoned here for an entire month. I stared at her coldly, saying nothing. Seeing my unfriendly expression, Freya instead let out a soft laugh and came forward to take my hand. She said, come on. I'll go downstairs with you for dinner. This house was huge, almost as big as the Lu family's ancestral mansion. The servants working here were all well-trained. Except for Freya, none of them spoke a word. At first, I almost thought they were all deaf and mute. On top of that, the manor had bodyguards. I didn't know that at first. One night, when I tried to escape, I managed to avoid the servants in the house. But before I could even reach the artificial lake across the way, several men in black suddenly surrounded me. They dropped in like the secret guards from an old wuxia novel. I was so angry I nearly went mad. It felt like Freya was treating me as if I were some kind of criminal. Chapter 2. I asked, when can I go out? She said, the winter break isn't far off now. Where should we go have fun? Freya handed me a bowl of soup, her tone casual and indifferent. I really wanted to dump that bowl of soup over her head. But since this whole house was filled with her people, I could only suppress the fury in my chest. I said, go wherever you want. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to get out of here. She said, Willow is looking for you, you know? Right now isn't a good time to leave. I laughed. I'd rather she find me than be locked up here. Hearing this, Freya paused for a second, then smiled faintly and said, you don't seem to understand Willow's temperament very well. If she found you, the first thing she would do is lock you up too, and the guards would only be even stricter than here. The bullet comments popped up. Freya's actually telling the truth this time. George, Willow just begged her grandfather a few days ago to buy her an island. Do I really need to say what that island is for? Another comment said, that's nothing. In the original story, Willow imprisoned the male lead on an island. Later, when the male lead tried to escape and she caught him, she immediately had people buy a few tigers and lions from Africa. I was speechless. The next comment replied, looks like staying with Freya is actually safer. Honestly, I don't think George needs to go against Freya at all. Right now, she's genuinely just worried that Willow might find you and do something bad to you, which is why she keeps you here. Another bullet comment agreed. Yeah, George, your situation is completely different from the original novel. You're not Makoto. Makoto liked the heroine but kept being ambiguous with the Lu sisters at the same time, constantly flip-flopping between the heroine and the sisters. That's what drove them to such extreme actions. Someone else replied, "Exactly. I was so frustrated reading it. Makoto was such a jerk. He'd act all deep and say he wasn't good enough for the heroine, pull that love is letting go nonsense, and then openly flirt with the two villainesses in front of her just to make her give up on him. In the end, both sisters fell for him, and he had the audacity to say he only saw them as sisters. Damn, I've never seen anyone so pretentious." Another comment came in, "Well, that's just the drama of love triangles. Without that, how would they drag the word count? Come on, even with love triangles you can't do it like that. Villains are people too. Why should they be treated as disposable tools between the male and female leads?" Exactly, thank goodness the plot changed. Without Freya and Willow interfering, the male and female lead side is just pure chaos every day. I'm dying laughing. A sharp-tongued comment read, "Even if it's a pile of crap, when 3 people are fighting over it, it still smells sweet. But when only one person is left, it just reeks." Another bullet comment replied, "Crude words, but not a crude point. Still, man, that was too crude." After scrolling through the comments, I stayed silent for a long while. Then I asked, "When was this house bought?" Freya pressed her lips together. 2 years ago," I said, speechless. "To lock me up in it?" She snorted. "Of course not." She said, "Back then I just thought the scenery here was nice and figured I'd come here for vacations in the future." I shrugged. "You think I'm an idiot?" Freya rolled her eyes. "You're not exactly that smart either." I was speechless. After dinner, I insisted on going out. Being locked in here for a whole month, I was suffocating. Freya saw she couldn't win against me. She said, "Fine, but I have to go with you." Dusk fell. The night spread across the sky. In the distance, dense trees with ancient, strange shapes loomed and blocked out the heavens. Closer by, a mist seemed to rise from the empty lawn, like a painting. I had to admit the scenery here really was quite nice. But Freya's so-called letting me go out was nothing more than agreeing to let me take a walk around the back mountain. Unexpectedly, there was even a horse ranch there. I asked, "Can we ride horses here?" The old man had once made me take riding lessons for a while. Although I wasn't very good at it, I could manage to ride somewhat. She frowned and said, "If you're not good at it, you could get hurt. I advise you." I waved her off and walked straight up to a pure white Mongolian horse. Freya bit her lip, trying to stop me. She said, "This horse has a fiery temper. You probably won't be able to handle it." I sneered. "How do you know I can't handle it if I don't try? Once I got on that horse, I'd like to see who could stop me then." However, 5 minutes later, I paid the price for those words. The horse's temper really was fiery. When I fell off, I finally had to admit she was right. I rolled several times across the grass. Fortunately, the lawn was thick enough that I wasn't badly hurt. "Are you all right? You're not injured, are you?" When Willow came running over, I heard the tension in her voice. I could even detect the tremor in her tone. I gritted my teeth and said, "Not dead yet." Fueled by anger, I spoke recklessly. After a few seconds of silence, she huffed angrily, "George, do you have a death wish?" I said nothing, only meeting her gaze in silence. Back at the villa, Freya still called for a doctor to check me. After confirming there was no serious problem, the doctor finally left. That night, after showering, I was just about to get into bed when there was a knock on my door. In this house, there was naturally no one else who would knock on my door. Annoyed, I turned and opened it. Freya stood there with a medicine box in hand. She had come to treat my wound. Although I wasn't badly injured, my elbow had been cut by a sharp stone. It had bled a little at the time. She raised her eyes and asked, "Did you get it wet?" I replied, "No kidding. How can you shower without getting it wet?" She said, "It must hurt." I said, speechlessly, "You're exaggerating. It was only a cut the size of a fingernail. Without medicine, I wouldn't even have noticed the pain." Freya applied the medicine, gave me a few instructions, then got up and left with the box. Her room was right next to mine. During this time, whenever she came over here, she basically stayed in the room next door. For 2 days in a row, Freya came to help me apply the medicine. On the third night, after she finished, as if she'd suddenly remembered something, she said, "There's an exam coming up. I won't be able to come until Friday." I was sitting on the sofa, playing a game, too absorbed to pay her any attention. I replied, "Whatever." She asked, "Don't you have anything you want to say to me?" The team fight in my game was about to start, and she still had so much nonsense. So I shot her a single word, "Get lost." Hearing me curse at her, Freya actually chuckled softly. One of her hands reached over and poked my face. Her slender index finger had just applied medicine on me, carrying a faint minty scent. I looked at her with disgust, ready to hurl another insult. But suddenly, she straddled my lap. The next instant, something soft pressed against my lips. The atmosphere froze. My whole body went stiff. My damn game just got wiped in a team fight. 3 seconds later, Freya pulled back. Seeing my thunderstruck expression, her eyes turned sultry as she whispered, "George, that was my first kiss." She asked, "How was it?" She actually asked how it was. When people are embarrassed, they really can't control what comes out of their mouth. I babbled nonsense. "Freya, that was my promotion match and you made me lose the fight, and you still ask me how it was? I didn't even taste anything." She blinked and said, "What a coincidence, neither did I. So, shall we do it again?" Her gaze was tender, her tone seductive. Before I could react, her warm lips pressed onto mine again. But this time was nothing like before. If the first kiss carried a touch of shyness, then this kiss was blazing like fire, like a drowning person clinging to driftwood, like finding a spring in the desert. Freya's arms wrapped around my neck like vines. As our lips and tongues tangled, my mind blurred. Her breath was like sparks igniting a searing heat in my chest. Consciousness was burned away by instinct. Reason told me to stop before things spiraled further. But the chaotic pull was far stronger. Me, a supposedly ambitious young man, falling headlong into such temptation. It was utterly absurd. Only when our breathing grew ragged did we slowly let each other go. Freya's sweet breath brushed my nose as she whispered, "Brother." It was the first time she had called me brother. And it had to be at a moment like this. My awareness returned. Recalling the chaos of just now, shame overwhelmed me. I snapped, furious and flustered, "You should be calling me Daddy." Freya nestled into my arms, laughing genuinely from her heart. Ashamed and angry, I remembered the reckless words I just blurted. Inwardly, I apologized to Father Lou several times in a row. After driving Freya out, I rubbed my throbbing temples and was about to take another shower. That was when the bullet comments appeared. "Bro, did it feel good just now?" My mind exploded and the blood in my body froze. For a long moment I said nothing. For the first time I actually spoke back to the bullet comments. I asked, You saw that? Holy shit. Then how are we any different from being filmed in some cheap porn? I was going insane. The comments replied, "Ha ha ha. Quit messing around. Don't worry, George. We can't see it." Of course, the system censors that kind of scene, we're just imagining it ourselves. The next comment said, "Which means please answer our question seriously. Did it feel good just now?" I held my forehead. I asked, "Are you people really that open? You talk about stuff like this with random strangers online?" They shot back, "George, saying it like that really hurts. Aren't we brothers?" "Yeah, man. Around here, if we call each other brothers, then there's no holding back. So tell us, did it feel good?" Another comment chimed in, "Judging from the reset screen, you two were still on the sofa, so it probably didn't go further than that. Since it was your first time, of course, you'd take it slow." The next bullet comment read, "So they only kissed. That's my guess. All right then, got it." I was speechless. Chapter 3 Friday. Freya came as scheduled after finishing her exams. Maybe because of what happened that night, the moment I saw her, I felt a vague sense of awkwardness, along with a trace of guilt. For the first time since childhood, I was feeling this inexplicable emotion toward her. Unbelievable. I decided to go upstairs early, take a cold shower and calm myself down. Where are you going? Freya called after me. Sleep, I said. She snorted coldly and asked, Are you avoiding me? No, I replied. She said, Take a walk with me for an hour. Didn't you want to go out? Tomorrow we'll go to the city. I hadn't been outside in over a month. There was no way that sentence wouldn't tempt me. I turned around, stared at her seriously, and said, Then we're just walking, nothing else. Freya looked at me, her eyes soft and alluring. Then, what do you want to do? Shit, I really underestimated a woman's scheming. After the walk, Freya practically shadowed me step for step back upstairs. The moment we reached the second floor, she couldn't wait, hooked her arms around my neck. The next second, she stood on tiptoe and kissed me. No time to even think. After a fierce clash of lips and tongues, my competitive streak was fully ignited. How should I put it? Anyway, when I came back to my senses, I was already carrying Freya and tossing her onto the bed. Fuck, what the hell was I doing? I tried to slam the brakes, but she wrapped her arms tighter around my neck and kissed me again. Freya really knew how to kiss, well-trained material this one. I tried to break again, but Freya whispered coquettishly in my ear, Take it seriously. And just like that, I lost my head. With the experience from last time, I was already good at running my hands through her hair. She was absorbed, giving it her all, and it felt like we were venturing into new territory. I could clearly feel Willow's body trembling. The next moment, my brain exploded with a loud buzz. Chapter 4. This time, we still didn't go all the way, but it felt like I had been reborn, suddenly refreshed and clear-headed. This feeling was completely new to me, impossible to describe. How should I put it? It was like I had just opened the door to a whole new world. After all, I'm already at this age. I've never even dated a girlfriend before. Of course, I have normal needs. And out there, some things you want to try you have to pay money for. Not to mention, it's unsanitary. Risky too. Freya, on the other hand, even offered aftercare service. After it was over, she blushed and asked how it felt. She asked, Brother, are you okay? At that moment, I was in post-nut clarity, heart calm, free of desire. So, I just replied flatly with 4 words. It was all right. I had no idea those 4 words would cut into Freya's heart. I didn't realize until the next day, when the bullet comments came online. George, what exactly happened last night during the blackout? Freya cried. I was confused. I asked, What happened to her? The comments replied, Ahem, we want to know too. But her phone screen was full of mosaics. The system automatically censors it. We couldn't see anything. From what we could observe, though, it looked like she was practicing some skills, if you know what I mean. That's why we're asking you, George, what happened last night? Honestly, I really didn't want to discuss this kind of thing with a bunch of bullet comments. So, I replied seriously, Nothing. Nothing happened between us last night. The bullet comments fell silent for a moment. Then one said, Bro, don't tell me you couldn't get it up. I was speechless. Another chimed in, I get it, man. It's normal the first time. Don't worry about it. Don't take it to heart. Just keep trying. I was speechless. And another added, just saying, if you really do have that problem, we could always look into outside help. You know what I mean? Once again, I was speechless. Chapter 5. Freya was true to her word. The next day, she really did take me to the city. It was only then that I realized I wasn't in City B nor in City A. Instead, I was in an entirely different city, over 300 kilometers away from both. My interest in staying there vanished instantly. I had originally planned to have a classmate pass on a message for me. But here, I didn't know a single soul. Who could I even look for? Maybe sensing my dark mood, Freya explained. Willow's been desperately searching for you. I had to be cautious. But in another 2 months, let's go on a trip to Europe together. Okay? I had no patience left to wait. I asked, So if she keeps looking for me, you'll just keep me locked up here forever? She said, Of course not. This winter break, I'll be starting my internship at Lou Corporation. At that time, I'll bring up our situation to grandfather. Even if Willow refuses to accept it, she wouldn't dare defy his word. That wasn't necessarily true. I remembered what the bullet comments had said, that in the original novel, Willow, the yandere, went against her grandfather's wishes and even turned against her own sister, all for the sake of the male lead. I wasn't saying Willow would definitely do that, but in this novel, maybe that was simply her character setting. Wait. I replayed her words in my mind. I asked, "What exactly are you going to tell your grandfather? What situation between us?" Freya lowered her gaze, the corner of her lips curling into a faint smile. She said, "What? Don't want to take responsibility for me?" Responsibility. She had the nerve to say that? What had I done to her? It was always her scheming and seducing me, not the other way around. I looked at her seriously and said, "Freya, if you're not afraid of angering your grandfather to death, then go ahead and tell him." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, pondered for a moment, then said each word slowly, "George, stop worrying so much. I can tell you 2 things. She held up one finger. First, grandfather isn't nearly as stubborn as you think. Second, whether or not you're ready to take responsibility for me, I'll tie you to my side. From this moment on, no one will ever be able to take you away from me, not even Willow." I didn't want to argue with her about this anymore. The car fell into silence. In the end, both of us left feeling unhappy. Chapter 6. After the weekend, Freya had to return to school. She once again warned me not to try escaping. Of course, I wanted to escape, but with so many bodyguards, would they ever allow it? The only thing worth celebrating was that my riding skills had improved lately. I'd even gotten familiar with that white Mongolian horse. Maybe one day, I could ride it and make a run for freedom. A week later, Freya finally returned. I was out for a stroll on the Mongolian horse when she stood across from me, watching quietly, looking stunned for a moment. Night was falling. After 2 laps, I finally stopped. Freya walked toward me, still dressed in her fitted black dress, the light silver-rimmed glasses perched on her nose, her whole presence radiating a natural icy aura. When she came close, she naturally slipped her arm through mine. She said, "Your riding skills have really improved." I paused, glancing at her sideways. "It's all right," I said. She asked, "Have you eaten yet?" "Yeah," I replied. We returned to the villa. Freya followed behind me. The moment we stepped through the door, she hooked her arms around my neck. Just as she was about to rise on tiptoe and kiss me, I spoke calmly, "Willow, how stupid do you think I am? You really thought putting on glasses and changing clothes would make me mistake you for your sister?" Her body froze. After a long silence, she dropped the disguise and threw herself into my arms. Her voice sounded choked, like cotton muffling the words laced with grievance. She said, "Brother, I didn't mean to trick you. This whole place is full of my sister's people. If I didn't disguise myself as her, I never could have gotten in." I sighed. This girl looked thinner. When I first saw her just now, the exhaustion in her eyes was obvious. Clearly, she hadn't been sleeping well these past days. I sighed again, softening my tone as I asked, "Have you eaten?" Pitifully, she said, "Not yet. What do you want to eat? I'll have the kitchen make it." I asked, but Willow only clung to me tightly, refusing to let go. She said, "No, I just want to be with you." She added, "Brother, do you know how hard I've been searching for you?" Only after she had hugged me enough did I go downstairs and ask the maid to cook a bowl of noodles and bring it up. I sat and watched her finish eating, then casually asked, "Where's your sister?" Willow's face instantly darkened, her expression filled with resentment. "I don't want to talk about her," she said. I replied, "You don't want to talk about her, fine. But I need to remind you, she's your elder sister. Whatever you do, don't forget that." Willow looked straight at me, her eyes brimming with jealousy. She snapped, "Don't worry. It's not like she's going to die." Hearing that, I felt a little less worried. "All right then. It's late. I'm going to shower. Find any room you like and get some sleep," I said. But she answered, "Brother, I want to shower too. Can you help me find some clothes to change into?" I went to Freya's room and grabbed a brand new nightgown that hadn't been unwrapped yet, handing it to her. After Willow left, I showered and was just about to collapse into bed for some proper rest when another knock came at my door. Willow stood outside in a dark silk nightgown, looking up at me with the same pitiful expression she used to have as a child. She said, "Brother, I can't sleep. Can I stay in your room for a while?" I was speechless, already searching for an excuse to refuse. But then she added, "I really missed you. I haven't slept well these past days. I think I might even have insomnia now." As pitiful as she sounded, I still hesitated. After all, this wasn't like when we were kids anymore. We were both adults now. Just as I was hesitating, the bullet comments suddenly popped up online. "George, I advise you to just agree to her request. When you went to get the nightgown, Willow carefully searched your room. On your sink, she found 2 toothbrushes. You didn't see her expression. Her face suddenly turned dark. Even the best actress couldn't fake that kind of yandere vibe." The next comment read, "Exactly. She's probably already guessed about you and Freya. Of course, Willow wouldn't hurt you, but Freya, that's another story." A chill shot through me. That toothbrush really had been Freya's from the other day. I never thought it would give me away. My scalp tingled. I switched tracks fast, hurriedly changing my lines. "Come in." There was still a sofa in the room. Willow naturally sat down on it. She asked, "Brother, have you been living here all this time?" I forced myself to stay alert and answered, Yeah." She paused, then said faintly, "That day, why did you try to run away? Was my confession so disgusting to you?" For this question, I chose the safest possible answer. "Willow," I said, "all these years I've always treated you as a sister. You understand that, don't you?" She immediately countered, "Then what about Freya? Do you also treat her as a sister?" Shit, how was I supposed to answer that? If I said yes, would she even believe me? She asked, "Did you two sleep together?" Willow's tone and expression flipped in an instant, like she had become a completely different person. Startled me. It was the first time I'd ever seen Willow like this, seductive yet sinister. Her gaze carried a sickly, twisted allure. In that moment, she was exactly like her character in the original novel. On the outside, she seemed pure and harmless, but inside dark, yandere, dangerous. I stared at her in shock, forgetting to answer. Maybe realizing her loss of control, Willow walked closer to me, her eyes filled with regret. "I'm sorry, brother," she said softly. "I wasn't blaming you. It's my fault. I trusted Freya too much. I always thought she hadn't found you yet. Every week, she went out saying she had news about you. I believed her completely, never doubted her once. I never thought she was hiding you all along. I was too stupid." She said, "I was the one who confessed to you first. So why should she get to snatch you away from me?" "Humph. Tomorrow we'll leave this place. We'll go somewhere only the two of us exist." She leaned on my shoulder, whispering softly. But inside, I felt cold all over. So, it's come to this. The two villain sisters still heading toward the doomed ending written in the novel. All my effort, all my schemes. Yet I was still the one trapped in a cage. If I'd known, I should have just taken the old man's 200,000 yuan and left back then. That would have been better than being imprisoned like this. Unbelievable. Infuriating. What am I just supposed to accept this fate? If this is the destiny of the Liu sisters, does it have to be mine too? No. I refuse. I've got a damn cheat ability, and this is how I end up? Why should I? If they can fall into darkness, why can't I? Why should I obediently let the two of them control me? I snapped angrily. So what if I slept with Freya? What's the problem? What, are you going to throw a tantrum about it? Willow instantly let go of me, her face tense as she hurried to explain. "Of course not, no way. That's not what I meant." I sneered. "If you're going to be that dramatic, then you'd better stay far away from me." The tips of Willow's ears flushed pink. She murmured softly, "I wasn't, brother, I'm not that kind of person." I asked, "Earlier, you said you wanted to take me away. Where exactly were you planning to go?" She said, "To a place where no one could ever find us." No doubt it was the island from the original novel, the one where she imprisoned the male lead and later even brought lions and tigers onto it. I walked over to the sofa and sat down, resting one arm on the armrest, watching her with calm detachment. Too bad, I said. I don't like isolated places. I like noisy, lively ones. Do you understand? Willow went silent, seeming a little uncertain. Come here, I said, beckoning her. She obeyed without question. When she sat beside me, I steeled myself, stroked her cheek and said, Willow, why don't we live like when we were kids? You, your sister, and me, the three of us together forever. Wouldn't that be good? She looked blank, as if she hadn't processed my words. I continued, honestly, my feelings toward you and your sister are the same. I can't abandon either of you. The three of us living together, that's the best compromise, the most perfect solution. Willow finally understood. Her face was filled only with shock. It was so far removed from her original plan, to chain me to that island and live together in solitude. Soon, her eyes showed a mess of emotions. Hesitation, conflict, doubt, turmoil. I decided to hit her with a strong dose. Sometimes you have to risk it all to win big. I grabbed the back of her head and kissed her directly on the lips. Like a jolt of electricity, Willow shuddered violently. She stared at me in stunned silence. I rubbed her lips with my fingertips and said, Was that your first kiss? Felt good. Your lips are soft. I want everything about you to belong to your brother. Is that okay? Willow slowly came back to herself, a blush rising on her cheeks. She didn't answer but nodded with absolute seriousness. I said, But I like obedient girls. Will you always listen to me? If you're obedient enough, your brother will reward you. After a long moment of silence, Willow finally gave in. She leaned over and kissed me softly on the cheek. Her voice was hoarse yet tender as she whispered, Okay, I'll always listen to my brother. I smiled in satisfaction. Good girl. Tonight you can sleep on this sofa. Tomorrow morning, tell your people to release Freya. I have something to say to both of you. Hearing that I wanted her to release Freya, Willow hesitated. I pressed her with a teasing edge to my voice. Or do you want to sleep on the bed instead? Her aggrieved eyes suddenly lit up, her gaze sticky and longing, like a puppy from our childhood. She asked, Can I? Of course, I said. But don't disturb me. Lack of sleep shortens your life and I don't plan on dying young. She replied sweetly, All right, I promise I won't bother you. Willow kept her word. Even though she slept beside me, she stayed quiet the whole night. Early the next morning, she really did order her people to release Freya. 2 hours later, Freya arrived by car. Her face was bruised, the corner of her lips split. Clearly, Willow's people had beaten her badly. The three of us sat in the living room. Between the two sisters, the tension was sharp enough to see with the naked eye. I calmly repeated what I had said to Willow the night before. Willow's face was calm as if she had already accepted reality. Freya, on the other hand, looked utterly shocked, dumbfounded, and demanded I repeat myself again. When she heard the exact same words, her composure shattered. She screamed, George, don't you dare. I will never agree to this. I expected that much, after all, she was such a tsundere. But this was even better. I never actually intended to go that far anyway. At last, I could walk out of here openly and legitimately. I said, Since you don't agree, then I'll just leave with Willow. I sincerely hope you can give us your blessing. Willow, let's go. The calm expression on Willow's face instantly switched to delight, as if fortune had just fallen from the sky and knocked her senseless. Her sister, on the other hand, looked ready to cough up blood from rage. She shouted, George, if you think you can dump me, forget it. I turned around coolly, meeting her eyes with a calm smile. So what you mean is, you agree? Freya's pupils contracted sharply. She glared at me, silent. I said, Willow, let's go. The moment the words left my mouth, Freya rushed over, grabbed my arm, and spat through clenched teeth. I agree. George, don't you dare think you can ever get rid of me in this lifetime. And so, I returned to Haiching. Friends, classmates, familiar shopping malls, familiar streets. Everything felt harmonious and natural. Indeed, life is precious, love is valuable, but if it's for freedom, both can be cast aside. Aunt Wu asked me if things abroad were fun. It seemed Freya and Willow had covered up my running away incident for me. I said, "It was fun. Next time I'll take you, Zach, and Uncle Koo with me." She said, "Well, that's wonderful. Our George is finally grown up. He can take us old folks abroad to play now." Aunt Wu chuckled happily. Freya and Willow continued their schooling. I planned to look for a new job. After all, I still had to stay here for at least another year before I could return to City A. Too bad. I actually liked my previous job. It was easy, and the relationships were simple. And I went and screwed it all up. That night, I was browsing job listings on my computer when there came a knock at the door. I got up and opened it. "Brother, can I sleep in your room tonight?" Willow smiled radiantly. She was wrapped in nothing but a towel hanging loosely over her, revealing glimpses of pale skin. As if afraid I'd refuse, she quickly added, "I can sleep on the sofa." I was about to agree when Freya appeared, long wet hair clinging to her shoulders, water droplets still trailing down her fair face, clearly fresh from the shower. She said, "I want to sleep here too. I'm doomed." Could these two possibly be any bolder? Even though Aunt Wu, Zach, and Uncle Koo's rooms were all downstairs and they normally wouldn't come up, still, this was way too blatant. I thought for 1 second, then came up with a solution. "Only one of you can stay. Settle it with rock, paper, scissors." 30 seconds later, I opened the door again. Willow flashed me a victory sign. "Brother, I won," she said. I chuckled, lifted my hand, and rewarded her with a gentle pat on the head. "Good kitty," I said. Bullet comments scrolled by LMAO. I finally saw Freya's phone screen this time. She was searching, "How to win at rock, paper, scissors." "Sis, you've got an IQ of 140. Could you not be this ridiculous?" Another comment read, "Crying here? Who can even tell the difference between George and an emperor at this point? I want to live like this too." And finally, one more message of blessing. "George, you have to stay happy. The villain sisters are all yours now. Stay happy, okay?"